investigations that have been brought on football programs in the SEC and also specifically into the allegations that have recently come out about Oklahoma State University. But before we start talking about all that, I want you to meet our esteemed panelists. So let's start with you, Jared.
Hello, I'm Jared Groff. I'm a senior at Temple University.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Jared. And Tevin, how about you next?
Hi, Tevin Harris from DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois. Always here, ready to talk football.
Great. Good to hear from you. And Jeff, what about you?
Jeff Spiegel out of the University of Arizona, and I'm excited to get this started.
All right, good. Then we will do that just for you, Jeff. So recently, I'm sure most of you know, Sports Illustrated released information from a 10-month investigation on Oklahoma State University's football program. In the report, it cited cases of payment for players' actions on the field, academic leniency in order to keep players eligible, tolerating and in some instances enabling drug use, as well as enticing recruits with special perks, sometimes including sex. So let's go straight to you guys. I want to know how you felt right after you heard this news. Jared, let's hear from you first.
So I know that this is, unfortunately, it's becoming somewhat of a commonplace here in the college sports world. So I think my initial reaction, I think I was disheartened, not surprised. You hear about this. This obviously isn't the first time that this has happened on a major campus. We've had Ohio State, we've had Miami. If you want to date back even further, you can go back. Penn State, that's a clearly different topic. But finding a scandal in college football nowadays just isn't that surprising. There are certain aspects that are a little more surprising than others. The drug use, the sex. I think that's a completely different animal than we're used to seeing. As far as the academics and the money aspect side of things, like I said, disheartened, not surprised.
All right, I agree with that. Now, Tevin, let's go to you.
I think to echo on Jared's sentiments, it's hardly to be surprising anymore because it's so common on college campuses now. I think the biggest surprise to me was that they've taken this way back. It's almost like they're running this how SMU did back in the early 80s. This is just surprising. Money being handed out like this, it's just weird to do. You would think that they'd be more cautious with how they do this, with the sex flying around and everything, but it seems like they have no way of policing themselves. They honestly need help.
All right, and last but not least, Jeff.
I agree with what the two before me have said. It's really not a surprise when you hear about players getting special treatment, whether it's money or academic. The grades are. It's no surprise to anyone that the best athletes are taking the least amount of classes. Johnny Manziel's taking online classes, but who knows if he's actually the one taking the class online. So there's always going to be scandals here and there. But when you hear about the alternate issues that the prostitution, if you will, of different of different universities, the drug use, that's really a shocker. And like Kevin was saying, this isn't the first time we've heard about stuff like this. It goes all the way back to SMU. It's just more of a shock that the media blows it up, kind of how they have that.
Okay, and all three of you mentioned that you're not exactly shocked about this. What do you guys think that kind of says about maybe our generation, I guess? Is it kind of a problem that you think none of us are really surprised when we hear this news anymore?
I think it's more, I don't think it's a generational thing. I think it's more of a result of the system. College sports, whether it's fair or not, get just as much coverage, are just as hyped up as professional sports. And in some cases, they receive even more attention than professional sports. So I think it's just a result of that system, that coverage, more than it is a generational thing, in my opinion.
I definitely have to agree with him on that point. I don't think it's so much a generational thing. I think it almost results to a common sense type of thing. When you get these kids at the age of 18 and you hand them the world and tell them they're basically going to be the ones you're watching, the first thing they're going to think is, well, why am I not being compensated for this? And that's before you look at all the dollar amounts that presidents are making. You're looking at the coaches making $1 million settlements. It seems like the players are always the ones that it kind of falls on. And then when they take money, that's when we start having problems.
All right. Okay. So let's just move on. You guys hit on this a little bit, but as a college student, what part of this report struck you the most, that was the most shocking in this specific report? Jared, we'll start with you.
I think I touched on this earlier. I really think, like I said, I'm not super surprised by the academics. That goes back, whether it's student athlete or not. That's always a big thing on college campuses. The money being handed out, that's been a big argument for several years now. I know that there's even been proposals for stipend plans that haven't exactly gone through yet. So as far as money getting tossed around, this pay for play, not startled by that. Like I said, I think the big thing for me, obviously we're still waiting for the full report to come out on the rest, but the drugs and the prostitution, the sex that's kind of getting thrown around, those are the two, I guess, most disheartening. Like I said, there's always going to be forms of, in academics, there's always going to be forms of cheating, whether that's fair to assume or not. There's pay for play. That idea keeps getting thrown around, but the drug and the sex you don't hear about necessarily being approved on or even being looked away from coaches and athletic departments. So if that part is true about the report, I would definitely say that that's the most striking aspects to mine.
All right, yeah, I agree with that. Jeff, what about you?
I really wasn't too surprised about any of it, to be honest. We hear about a lot of the scandals, but I think the thing that shocked me the most is just how the NCAA has dealt with this over the past few years. I mean, you hear about this in the SEC, the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the Big 12. It's not like one division has just kind of been doing it. It's just the fact that every good athlete is coming out of high school trying to get the best that they can, and some of them come from some poor situations. So for them to be able to take money and help their family out right away because they can't go to the NFL, I think that's something the NCAA needs to look into, and whether they, set a ceiling that the school can pay, or just make it part of the academic scholarship. I think that they need to look into, hey, we will pay these players, but because they are selling their jerseys, they're selling them as a product, but they're not gaining the full rewards for selling a Johnny Manziel jersey and him reaping the benefits.
All right, Tevin, what struck you the most?
I think anytime you have something like the sexual scandal going around, that's always going to be more shocking than anything you hear about money. You have these young women out here basically doing the school service, and we don't even know what they gain out of this. So I think that's definitely something that would need to be looked at more than the money aspects of it.
Right. Okay. And as college students, we are in the place of drugs, and these are around. These things are around. Do you think it's just because these are famous football players, they're getting looked at more under a microscope with these things?
I would say that the biggest thing is not that it's around them. It seems to be like openly talked about and almost accepted. I think if you get caught with things like drugs on a normal campus, there's something that's going to be done about it. You have stories here, the coaches, actively finding ways to get it to these players. It's just strange to hear something like that.
Yeah, I would agree with what Tevin said, just piggybacking off of that idea, is the fact that though these things do exist and are out there, it's not that, along with the fact that these players are under a microscope, these programs are under a microscope, the fact that, if true, these coaches seem to have known about the problem and not addressed it, which I think is the bigger thing, not only as football players, but as students, as people, as young men, having these things approved or turned a blind eye to is definitely a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you guys read the report. You know what's all in this report. Do you think there's actually enough evidence here to actually punish Oklahoma State? And Tevin, let's go to you first.
I think there's not enough here. What you have is former players coming out and saying, this is what happened, I saw this happen. I think what they really need is a booster to come out to really nail his program, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. There's no incentive for these boosters to say, hey, I handed this kid $1,000 for him not doing anything for me. Until that really happens, or until we get one bold enough like Nevin Shapiro from Miami, where he just so wants to be a part of this team that he's going to hang out with them and get himself caught. I think that's what's going to take for them to actually have enough evidence for the NCAA to enforce a strict penalty that's more than a slap on the wrist.
Right, that's a great point. Jeff?
Again, I think it all boils down to what the NCAA is allowing. You heard about all summer how Johnny Manziel this, Johnny Manziel that. Oh, he's doing drugs, he's taking money, he's doing this, and they suspend him half the game. If you want to make a statement, you at least suspend him a full game. I don't know how you can go around and say, oh, we're this prestigious, blah, 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 we're selling all this. You're selling students to media that's going to eat them up, just like they did to Johnny Manziel. And now they're starting to move into different schools and finding out how they've cheated, how they've done this, they've done that. But it really just boils down to the fact that the NCAA, for the most part, is letting this happen. You take away a couple playoff berths or bowl games here and there, but for the most part, Ohio State is still a powerhouse. USC is still a powerhouse. And if you're going to let that happen, then you're kind of just turning your shoulder and just saying, oh, do it, but just do it behind our back and don't let it get out.
Mm-hmm. Another great point. Jared, what about you?
I think Jeff and Tevin pretty much nailed it in saying that, Tevin especially said that, a lot of it is just hearsay. It's interviews with former players. There's not a whole lot of hard evidence that the NCAA could even use. And like Jeff said, you had the Johnny Manziel autograph scandal, and then he got suspended for half a game against Rice. So it all boils down to what the NCAA wants or how they want to be perceived in this situation. like Jeff said, Ohio State is still a powerhouse. They went through their scandal. So if there is hard evidence, we'll see. It hasn't had to this point much of an effect on Ohio State. So it boils down to whether the NCAA can find that hard evidence and if they want to make a statement.
Absolutely. So you guys both just hit on what the NCAA is going to do. What do you guys think that they should do, and what do you think that they actually will do, which might be two different things? So Jeff, how about you start?
I think pretty soon they're going to come down and just lay the hammer on everyone and say, if we hear one more thing starting from this year forward, we're going to have some serious ramifications. Other than that, for the most part, they're just going to, suspend a couple players, take some scholarships away. But again, I don't really see any. The minor things aren't going to change anything. Maybe a coach that, I'm not going to bash my own coach, but Rich Rudd has left behind a couple sketchy situations, and I don't really think that's going to change what he does. But for the most part, I think there's got to be a major change before we really see, a different outlook on how you recruit.
All right, Kevin, what about you? What do you think they're going to do?
Well, I think they're going to just hit him with a slap on the wrist. It's going to be maybe some wins getting taken away, a couple bowl victories, until there's substantial enough evidence that they can go down and lay some form of a death penalty that we always hear talked about on the program. People are going to keep trying to do it because what's the incentive not to? You make millions of dollars in these bowl wins. All they have to do is tarnish your name a little and take a couple victories away. It's going to keep going on until there's a serious consequence attached to it.
All right, I agree. And Jared?
Yeah, I don't see anything more than a slap on the wrist for Oklahoma State. Like we said earlier, I don't think that there's enough hard evidence that's been brought to light so far. Maybe we'll see something down the road where a booster comes forth or there is a little more evidence presented. But I don't see the NCAA providing more than just a slap on the wrist, even if for the fact that they have no hard evidence to go on. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. I don't think it's fair for anyone to make that judgment without that hard evidence. Right now, it's kind of just hearsay for former players. So I think regardless of where you are in this situation, whether you're in the NCAA or just on the outside looking in, I think it's hard for anyone to judge at this point what exactly happened and what that penalty should mean.
Okay, so do you guys think that these penalties are just too small to compare to what a winning season means to these teams? I mean, they talked about how Oklahoma State was desperate to have a winning season.
I think,
yeah, kind of. Go ahead.
That's fine. I think as of now, they can only do small penalties because the NCAA, as much as it likes to believe it does, has no real power in anything. They can try to get a couple forced confessions. They can shake their fist and say, we're really going to bring it down on you if you don't tell us what you want. But until then, there's nothing they can really do. What can you really do if you have no power to enforce any type of punishment other than we'll suspend you for a few games and take away a few scholarships?
Well, you were talking about the death penalty of the program. I mean, I think that might be the only thing that you really could do to start having some power as the NCAA. But
yeah, I think that's wrong. I think if you start throwing around death penalties, you're just going to create a giant uproar, and that'll just create a hurricane effect, and everything will be tossed around. But I don't really have an answer as to where to go forward. I don't think anyone really has an idea of how to fix this whole thing, other than to pay the players. But again, you're getting allegations from all across the board. It's tough to really decipher what's right and what's wrong, and where is the limit.
Yeah, I don't really see the NCAA having enough say if they do enact the death penalty, which happened at SMU. That's the only real way for the NCAA to make a huge statement like this. I'm pretty sure during the USC scandal, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they had to vacate their national championship wins. And honestly, what did that do for that program? Nobody really looks at that program any differently. They were still the elite status in college football for those years. You can say that, technically they're not the national championship. They didn't get the national championship that year. But effectively, what does that do? They're still on TV. They're still getting those recruits. They're still getting that exposure. So unless you completely kill their football program for a year or two or anything like that, they're still getting that same exposure, which in essence really boosts the success of the program in itself.
Okay. All right. Interesting points, everyone. So let's just move on. There's also a Yahoo Sports article that was just released about 5 SEC football players that violated NCAA rules by getting extra benefits while they were still on the college team. And the 3 schools that were involved in this specific report were Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. So how do y'all think that this compares to the allegations that were in the Sports Illustrated report? Kevin, let's start with you.
Well, I think this is way more influential and sticks to way more people for the sheer fact that we've got text messages exchanging account information, invoices. There are hard, concrete numbers and facts. I know they listed there's a couple of documents that were scanned, and we can actually go back and find where they were scanned at. As long as you have something concrete like that, I don't see how you get out of this if you're Alabama, Mississippi State, Tennessee, State, however.
Okay, Jeff.
I agree. It's a little more evidence, but again, it's still the same problem that you're facing, which is improper benefits. And until you boil down to what it truly means, then you're just going to keep floating around. And I don't really see how Alabama is going to get slapped on the wrist. You know, you take away those championships, and like Jared was saying, you still know who won. You still saw the domination that was Nick Saban dynasty, regardless of if you take that away or not. You may slow them down, but you're not gonna give them the death penalty. You can't destroy Alabama football or the SEC for that matter.
Okay, Jared.
I think this situation is a little different than what Oklahoma State is seeing right now. I think there's a lot more hard evidence, like Devin brought up. We have the invoices. We can go back. We can read the emails. We can read the text messages. There were, like Devin said, there were bank account numbers being thrown around and exchanged. I think that's a little harder to get away from. That's a lot more hard evidence than what we're seeing for Oklahoma State. That being said, I don't know that this is any more influential than what we're seeing at Oklahoma State, purely for the fact that this is pretty expected. SEC football, all of these are big programs in the NCAA, coming from the biggest conference in the NCAA, and it should come as no surprise, unfortunately, in this day and age, that money is being thrown around at these programs that are being treated like, or even better than some pro teams. So I don't see this as any more influential just because of the lack of surprise for college sports fans.
Okay, so the lack of surprise, I'm starting to feel like maybe Jeff and Jared, you guys are thinking that the NCAA can't do anything and you maybe don't think they should? Is that what I'm getting from you guys?
I'm not saying they shouldn't do anything, but I'm saying that we've seen this before, and like I said, it really shouldn't, unfortunately, come as a surprise. We've seen it with Ohio State with improper benefits. So we've seen it before. There's been precedent. Like Jeff said, teams like Alabama, they're still going to be the national tower. I don't see that program declining anytime soon. So unfortunately, you can hit them with a scholarship loss, but they're still going to go out there. They're still going to find some of the best high school athletes in the country, and might slow them down a little bit, but it's going to be hard to provide any more than a slap on the wrist.
So if they're finding these great recruits illegally, do you still think that that's fair, or do you think that the NCAA needs to continue to try to level the playing field for all of these teams?
I think it's a result of the system, to be honest. I know we brought it up before, but the NCAA has brought up this idea of a possible stipend for football players. Until that gets sorted out so that it's an equal playing field, regardless of the program, which I know is going to be difficult, and I am in no way trying to propose my own plan because I have no idea how the logistics of it would work. But until everybody gets on the same playing field as far as this money being thrown around, I'm not saying every school is doing it. I'm not saying the severity is going to be the same from campus to campus, program to program. But until there's somewhat of an equal playing field, it's going to be difficult.
I don't think that equal playing field can ever truly exist. Beyond the money, what I think a lot of people are missing is that the money comes because the program is very successful. If I'm a 5-star recruit, I want to go to the best place, not just to play college football, but the place that'll get me to the NFL. And I think as long as you got schools like Alabama that continue to win, they'll keep handing this money out because they know the players know I can get the money now and I can get the money later.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. These guys that are coming to Alabama, Tennessee, they're trying to get to the NFL, and in the meantime, they're going to take whatever they need to succeed. So if that's the brand new facilities that Oregon and Alabama are offering, that's part of the benefits. We're not going to have that at a school like DePaul, no offense, or the other schools. You're not going to get that. So there is no true level playing field. You just got to kind of control what you can control and hope that if they go over the line, you got to set the line. If you keep taking away some random BCS games, take away some old championships, old Heismans, that's not going to do anything. Those teams still get millions upon millions every year in revenue. So you need to start from the bottom and work your way up.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we could talk about this for a very long time and might not get anywhere. So we'll just go ahead and move on. Again, we were kind of talking a little bit about Alabama, and do you guys actually think that they could get punished? I feel like most of you feel that they couldn't. But Jeff, let's go to you.
I'm sorry, I did not really hear you.
Okay. Alabama, do you think that they could actually be stripped of a national title because of this?
Based on these allegations, I do. There's clear records showing that I think DJ Fluker got paid over $30,000, and that's more than enough money to have people start chirping and start questioning. How much are these guys getting paid? How much money is Nick Saban throwing around to get the best recruits? So yeah, I think they could take the championship away, but I don't think that'll change anything in anyone's mind.
Okay, Kevin?
To definitely echo off his sentiments, I think, yeah, they'll take it away, but really, if you're Alabama, what have you lost? We know you won the game. You still get the top of the millions of dollars they can't take out of your pocket. You basically accomplished everything you need, other than, now we have one less crystal ball to show in our place. Even now, this year, they're a great contender to win another one. So I think, yeah, they'll take it away, but what good does it do?
Okay, Jared?
I think a national championship being stripped might be a little bit severe in this case. I know a lot of money is being thrown around, especially in Fluker's case, if all the invoices and what we're seeing is accurate. But I think in order for a national championship to be stripped away, I think it might be a little bit difficult, just because it needs to be proved on a broader scale. I think allegedly paying one player might not be enough to get the championship stripped away. That being said, I'm going to go with the other guys here and just saying that I don't really think it does a whole lot. We all know who won the game. Like I brought up USC earlier. We've seen that example. I know that they've kind of had a slight decline, but that's still one of the elite programs in college football that year in, year out, they're contenders or would be contenders. So even stripping a national championship away, I don't really think it proves to be that much of a hindrance to these programs.
Okay, so I get that you guys don't think that it does anything to the program, but should it do something to how we view the program? So the fact that they got to that title, I guess you could call it illegally, should that bother us as fans?
I think it should, but it won't. Because fans largely don't really pay attention to the behind-the-scenes stuff until it gets thrust out in front of us in a news article like something SI did. Other than that, we just want to see Alabama go out there and play great, like they did in their very first game this season. We want to see the block kicks, the defensive plays, the touchdowns. Until it starts affecting the product on the field, I don't think fans will really care about it.
SEC football will sell itself, so you don't really have to worry about what goes on in the field. But I kind of relate it back to the steroids and Ryan Braun. He's doing something that is shunned upon by a lot of people, but he's out there to make his money. And until you just say if you get caught twice, you're done for your life. Kind of if you put that on coaches and players and schools, then it's really a place where you can start slapping them on the wrist and really show that this is something that you care about and you're trying to stop.
Okay, so any chance that Saban isn't safe? Do you think he might get forced out by the NCAA or possibly Alabama?
I think he could be forced out, but I think it'll be a situation where he kind of falls up into another job. Until it starts becoming toxic to hire him, schools are going to pick him up as soon as they can.
Anyone else?
I agree. I don't think, unless we start seeing a little bit more outside of the Fluker situation, unless this goes onto a bigger scale, I'm not downplaying the situation as far as in Fluker's case or anything like that. But I think if we're going to see one of the more well-known and established elite coaches in college football, I think it's going to take a little bit more than this to get forced out by the NCAA unless they really want to prove a point and set an example and force Saban out. I don't think Alabama necessarily sees Saban as too much of a problem to leave that program. I think he's done wonders in getting recognition for the Alabama football program. But I think it's going to take a little bit more for him to be forced out.
Okay. So a lot of people think that all of these things that we've been talking about are going on at every school. What do you guys think? And Jeff, we'll go to you first.
You'd be naive to say that this isn't going on at every big school, big powerhouse school around the country. It is about location when you're recruiting. It's also about the marketing that you do. So when you see Alabama competing in the national championship every single year, that's priceless marketing. They're bringing in over hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and if you say you got to kick Nick Saban out, you still won't be able to. They'll just, like Kevin was saying, they'll just jump to another job, maybe even NFL. It's just tough to stop.
Okay, Kevin.
I think it goes on everywhere, really. The big program schools are definitely paying people. There are very few that aren't at this point because it's become a quick stick. If I see someone else doing it, then I have to. And until we really get to the root of that problem, I think we're going to keep seeing it happen.
All right, Jared?
Yeah, I think to at least some extent, this probably happens at a lot of schools. Obviously, it might be a little bit more prevalent in the Oklahoma States, the Alabamas, and the SEC, big powerhouse programs across college football. Might be a little bit more prevalent, but I think to some extent, like these guys are saying, I think you just be at this point in today's college football. I think you just be a little bit naive to say that this doesn't happen to at least some extent on campus.
Okay, so this kind of brings us to our last point and everything that we've been talking about so far. What does this say about the atmosphere of the NCAA right now, and maybe where are we going to move forward from here? Jared, we'll start with you.
I think it's just a broken atmosphere, if anything. I mean, this is going to happen. All of this stuff, regardless of whatever the NCAA wants to do, however they want to handle this situation with Oklahoma State or these programs here in the SEC that are coming out, Mississippi State, Alabama, that kind of thing. Regardless of how they handle this situation, this is going to happen regardless. So I think it's a broken system. I think that's kind of what leads to all of this unsanctioned and improper benefits. I think, like I brought up earlier, if they're able to move to this stipend plan, you might see a little bit less. I mean, like I said, I don't know the logistics of or all the ins and outs of these plans, but I would think that fixing the system would be definitely a step in the right direction for improving the state of college football.
All right, Kevin?
I honestly don't think there is a way to fix this system. It's broken, but it's so broken, I think you might have to scrap it and just go with something else. When you see a number 2 Texas A&M jersey, we know it's Manziel. He may not have his name on it, he's not getting paid, but we know what we're paying for when we buy something like that. As long as players can point up and say, well, how come coach makes X amount of millions of dollars and I'm making nothing? You're going to keep having this problem where they're going to find ways to get paid. The best way to do it now is just figure out how can we kind of control it.
Okay, and finally, Jeff?
I agree with what they're saying. Again, the money's going to be thrown around. If you're not cheating, you're not trying, and that's really how it is in the NCAA right now. If you're not trying to get ahead and get the next best recruit, then you might as well just be sitting on your couch watching that play for the national championship. So it's gonna take a lot, but there's been a lot of bad news in the press lately, so it's gonna take something, maybe one more thing before it knocks over all the dominoes, and the NCAA has to clean it all up by just one last slap on the wrist.
Okay, so in your opinion, do you guys think that players should get paid to play?
I've always thought that they should get paid. I mean, they're putting out sometimes larger amount of workloads than what a normal student athlete is. When you hear these things like voluntary practices that aren't really voluntary, they're actually being told you have to be at this place, do this thing now. And I think it's also going to come back to the money thing. When you look at it, Texas A&M, we're selling dinners with Johnny Manziel for $1,000. He needs to see some of that money because there's basic costs that a lot of players can't recruit. Especially when you take something like a Des Bryant who came from a situation where he didn't have a lot of money growing up. So now you tell me I got to wait how long to actually get the payday? They only have a finite amount of time to make money with their bodies, and they're going to find a way to get it as quickly as possible.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think on some level, there needs to be some kind of compensation for these student athletes. I mean, you have guys like Johnny Manziel. You think Johnny Manziel, you think Texas A&M. These guys are huge marketing aspects for these schools. I mean, these football programs basically serve as one big advertisement for the school. Gets exposure not only for the football program, bringing in more recruits, but I mean, it just brings eyes to the university as a whole. So I think even in that respect, I think maybe some compensation is deserved. These guys are basically student workers in my eyes for the university, and I think on some level they need to see that compensation.
Okay, Jeff, do you have anything to add?
I mean, we've all kind of touched on it that they need to get paid in some aspect. It's just how do you really decipher between how does a backup D tackle get paid for Texas A&M compared to Johnny Manziel? And I do think they are really serving a job. They're out there working upwards of 50 hours a week. So I think if you treat it more like they have a student job on campus, then that's a step in the right direction rather than just kind of saying, oh, they're an athlete, they shouldn't get paid, even though we're like Kevin was saying, we're selling dinners with them for $50,000 to be at their table.
I agree with that. I think that personally, I don't think they should get paid to play just because if you have a scholarship, I mean, some of these schools cost $20,000 to go a year. You're getting paid in an education that some other people aren't getting. But I understand what you're saying about that, where it's other extracurricular things like a dinner. If you paid them hourly, maybe something like that. I don't think that just because you're on the football team, you should be getting a certain amount of money. But that was a great point when you said that. So I thought that was good. Okay, so I think we're done unless you guys have anything else to add.
I think until we see a big change in the system, you're not going to see anything different from these schools.
Okay, I agree. All right, so that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Jared, Jeff, and Tevin, for joining us on the first episode of Pulse of the Students. If you have want to get any more information on college sports, look at oncampussports.com. I'm Mackenzie Walter, and thank you so much for joining us.